Good evening. Welcome to Instagram Live. I'm delighted to be here. I'm going to now invite George Howe, our guest this evening. You'll have to bear with me. I'm new at this. Okay, that's now done. And here he is.
Hey,
wow,
Mr.
that
Bishop.
worked perfectly.
How you doing?
That was very sharp. So good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us. This is our second edition of Made in MIQTV. You may well remember that I interviewed James Bowler last summer. We're now fortunate enough to have another old civilian from the same class, from the class of 2015, George Howe. Even if you don't know George, you might know his mum. She's the head PA here at Queggs. As I said, George left school 6 years ago. He studied business, French, art and DT. We're going to ask him to bring us up to date with what he's been up to since he left school. You may have also seen on some of the things we've pushed out that George's current role is with Amazon Logistics. And I'm looking forward to asking him to tell us a bit more about that as well. So, hi, George.
Hello, you all right?
I'm good, thank you. Thank you for joining us. So, yeah, first question, I guess, is you left school in 2015. Tell us a bit about your journey from leaving school to sitting here today, if you will.
So 2015 I left, like you said. So from there I went to the University of Leeds and studied for 4 years. So I did French and international business there. After those 4 years, didn't really know what I wanted to do, wanted to go into. I spent a bit of time in France, which I really loved over there, and kind of fell upon a job working in daycare just with my brother-in-law in the local village. And then COVID hit from there. So from there, just wanted a bit of extra money. And that's kind of when I went into Amazon just as an agency worker. From there, really, that's how it all started.
Wow. Well, we'll talk more about Amazon in a minute. Am I right in thinking you were playing music as well? There was a
also that's still something that I class as my second job at the minute. In effect,
okay.
Yeah, full time with that at one point. But when I got into Amazon and got further into it, it just took over more and more. So it has become more of a side thing now. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Okay. Cool. You're a drummer, for those who don't know. Is that right?
Yeah, correct. Yeah.
Excellent. You're still carrying on with music. Well, we may talk about that a bit later. So, you started as an agency worker with Amazon. So, what happened from there? When was this? This was about a year and a bit ago.
September. Yeah. So it was September when I joined, the start of September. And just went in as an agency worker, employed by the agency, and then by February got onto the graduate scheme, and was just taking on a managerial role more and more. Relocated after that down south where I am now, and yeah, just kept on climbing. Really, it's been great ever since. I've never looked back. Really, still cherish the days of being an agency worker, and still some of my favourite jobs lie there in the warehouse. So yeah, I'll always have a soft spot for it.
So you started. Where did you start as an agency worker? That was up here. Was that in Sheffield?
That was in Sheffield. Yeah, in Sheffield. Yeah. So that was it's just near Meadowhall. So yeah, it's about 20 minutes from mine. So it was just very convenient just for the extra money.
It sounds like, therefore, you've not been with Amazon very long, but you've been able to achieve a lot in that short time. So could you tell us a bit about that journey from February to now? You started off on the graduate scheme. So where exactly have you been and what exactly have you been doing?
So I stayed in Sheffield for the first until July. So I was working on the morning shift at that point. However, after about March time, I moved on and took on nights from there. So I've been working nights ever since there. Come after Prime Week Prime Week this year, relocated down to London, taking on the nights role down here as well in central London. And I've also helped to launch a site in Manchester as well in between there. So I went up to Manchester for 2 weeks to launch that.
Wow. So you're a shift manager. Tell us a bit about what that involves on a nightly basis by the sound of it. You work overnight, is that right?
Yeah, so at the minute I'll get into work for about 8 o'clock-ish, and we'll finish about the same time in the morning, really. So it's a long shift. I'm only contracted to 4 days, so I do get a good bit of time off as well during the weeks, which is really nice. So we'll get in, make sure everything's been planned correctly, look how many, what our head count's going to be for the night, how much volume we've got, how much shipments we've got coming through the night, and we'll just plan our shift from there, put the people in the right positions. We'll get the sortation started, the operation going, and we'll take it hour by hour from there. Any challenges we face, we just take them as they come and fix them along the way.
Okay, cool. So help me understand a little bit then. I'm ordering a new, I don't know, I'm ordering a new screen cover for my phone.
Yeah.
So where are you in that process, your job? Because I'll obviously send the order. So what happens till I get my phone, and phone cover, and where do you feature in that? Where's your role?
The last mile, so we're the delivery part of it. So we'll actually get the shipments in as you see them at your door, so they're already packed by the time they come to us.
Oh, okay.
In the first mile. The middle mile is the transport that brings it to us in the last mile. And then what we'll do in delivery stations is we'll sort them by postcode, in effect. So we'll sort them into certain locations in postcodes. Once the whole night shift is done and the morning shift come in, the morning shift job is to pick the correct locations, put them onto the correct cages for the right driver to take, and then your driver will go and deliver your parcel. So we'll communicate with the drivers throughout the day, and then they'll eventually deliver the parcels.
Wow. So that's sounds like quite a lot of responsibility for someone who's only been there 10 months. Tell us about some of the challenges you faced in that period in terms of becoming a shift manager between February and now. It sounds brilliant.
Well, the biggest one I'll probably find is large teams. There's very large teams, especially at the minute. Christmas period, it's absolutely mad for us. So under me at the minute, I've got about 150 people under me at the minute, and also a team of 3 supervisors who are overseeing the operation as well, and we're working together to make sure everything fits in place properly. So the large teams is definitely a big one. In Sheffield, during Prime Week, we had probably about 300 people on the floor at once, whilst having to try and social distance as well through COVID, keep them 2 meters apart.
Wow.
Keep an eye on them all wherever they all are, really. So that was quite a big one for a challenge. But what kind of did help with that was having been in that situation of being an associate. When you do come across some challenging situations or challenging individuals, you kind of put yourself back into their boots and think, how would I like it if my manager at the time would have thought about this situation and like how they'd have dealt with it. So you can relate a lot more to the position they're in, really.
That's very interesting because you've done the job yourself. You could they face. And again, I don't mean to go on about it, but it feels like a very short time to me that you've been there in terms of the journey, which is fascinating and brilliant. So since you left Quegs, obviously that's happened. What do you see as the next stage? You're at Amazon. Do you see yourself staying there? Where is that going to lead on to for you? Or do you know that yet? What do you sort of see as the next stages?
So I want to kind of, so the highest level you can get to on nights is your operations manager, which I'd like to get to, which is a level 6. So I'm currently on my level 5 role. So I'd like to get to my level 6 and go from there. There's hundreds of departments and sectors you can go into, from sustainability to transport, the software, there's so many things you can go and do within Amazon that people tend not to leave the company. They tend to move department if they're not as they want to be where they currently are. So the logistics side is just one of hundreds of things you can do in the company.
Oh, okay. So that's interesting. People tend to come and stay. It's not a transient thing. Once you work for Amazon, the experience is good. And that sounds like it's been your experience, certainly. So
yeah.
Okay. So you might change direction in terms of department, but you see yourself staying with Amazon even after.
I'm very happy with my role at the minute. Very happy with where I work. The ability to relocate as well is fantastic. Not just nationally, also around the world. You can relocate very easily. depending on where you want to go. So that is something I'd like to look at as well in future. Just relocating within the company, maybe spend a bit more time back in France. That's one of my plans. So I'd like to go back over there ideally. But I would like to stay on nights for a good bit of time first, experience it. So
that lifestyle suits you at the moment, clearly.
Definitely. Yeah.
Oh, brilliant. So you mentioned levels there. You said to achieve level 6. I'm assuming that means you're at level 5 now. Talk to us about levels.
Okay. So your level 1 is your associate when you come into the business as like an agency worker, or one that gets an agency worker that then gets hired by Amazon and stays at the same level, but they have more sustainable job in effect. They're employed by the actual company. Your level 3 is your operations supervisor. Your 4 is your shift manager. 5 is your area manager. 6 is your operations manager. 7 is your delivery station manager. Then when you get to level 8, you get to your regionals. Level 9s and 10s are looking at managing countries or continents. And then, well, Jeff Bezos is the only level 12 there is, so he's the
level 12.
Yeah, he's the top of the.
You're 7 levels off being level with Jeff Bezos at the top of the company. That's really interesting. Brilliant. Well, good luck with that as you go forward.
Yeah.
And maybe some point in the future, we'll keep in touch and see what you're up to. But looking backwards a bit, so thank you for telling us what's going on at the moment. And it is genuinely fascinating to find out a bit about something many people use. We all, I'm sure, have encountered Amazon or heard of Amazon, even if we're not regular users.
Yeah.
Looking backwards a bit, so if you think back to when you were at school, are there any particular memories or particular moments that stand out for you that perhaps have influenced who you've become or the directions you've taken?
This was probably the question I struggled with most, because I had a lot of great memories at school. One thing for me, especially like when I was younger, coming towards the end of primary school as well and looking to go to a secondary school, I was never too bothered about education. Like, I kind of went to school because I had to. I always, in my head, like, your parents go to work, the kids go to school, and that's the way it is, in effect. But then when I remember coming home and my sister had gone to the girls' school, changed from the local school in Penistone, and my parents said, look, if you want to go to Queggs, then like we'll obviously take you around, do the exams and stuff. I can just remember being there on my first day, just going around. Just the overall experience for me, just through the years, was fantastic. It was kind of the place that made education interesting for me. And yeah, I hold it very, very dear in my heart, really. I feel like I wouldn't have got to university or got to where I am now without having like the education at Queggs that I did. Because it did just make me enjoy certain things about learning which I'd never enjoyed before.
Oh, that's really good to hear. And so clearly we've got lots of people joining, and I've seen lots of the names. There's a lot of current students in the school have joined as well. Do you have advice for current students in terms of what you've learned? I mean, it's not been that long. It's only 6 years since you left school. You seem to have achieved a lot in that time, and there's much more to achieve. But have you got any advice for current students, given your experiences?
Yeah, just the main thing that I could think of was just take like every opportunity you can get to kind of push yourself, even if it's outside of your comfort zone. There's so many opportunities on offer at a school like Queggs that you've got so many things you can do, that you can just push yourself with, whether it's in your comfort zone or outside of it. I think you just got to, if you think about doing something, you've just got to take the chance and do it, just to push yourself a bit further, and you probably won't regret it most of the time.
Oh, that's really good. And obviously you've taken an opportunity and look what you made of it in recent time. So
yeah,
not the direction you thought you were going in pre-lockdown, as that's been the case for many people, isn't it? So that's really interesting. Is there something, thinking back to school, that isn't a memory, something you didn't hear or didn't experience? In other words, perhaps there was a message you didn't get, and something we could have said in assembly that you wish you'd heard, knowing what you know now?
Yeah. So I think most of the time, obviously, when you're in school, you're pushing people to kind of do the modules they want to do, the courses they want to do, and things, the ones that they're best at. The one thing that kind of just came to mind was just to not be reliant on what you study to like decide what you're going to do for the rest of your life, because it doesn't have to be that way at all. And obviously schools preach like your qualifications and things, which is rightly so. But I feel just going out of school, you just shouldn't be too worried if you don't 100% know what you want to do.
Interesting. So yeah, your qualifications are part of it, but they're not all of it.
Yeah,
I think that's definitely an important message.
Yeah.
True. You studied French and international business.
Mm-hmm.
Why did you pick those course? Why did you pick those two? What drew you to that? Like obviously you studied French at school, but
yeah. So it was mainly because of that. Really, I'd always had felt like I was quite good at languages compared to other subjects, and also some of my favourite teachers were from the language department as well. Got on really well with them, and it was just a general love of languages, really, just like the influence from the teachers, the big mix of it, being able to travel and communicate still. So still, when I go back to France, like it's nice just to be able to go, and within a couple of days you're just straight back in. You can keep going from there. So it was just a big mix, really. Big mix of a few advantages that I thought I could just have throughout life, really, as a good life skill.
Absolutely. So something you enjoyed and felt you were good at, and then you were able to continue that. Go on, check some teachers that you said, some of your favourite teachers. Who do you remember fondly? Some of them may not work anymore, of course. You might have had some retirements.
The one that springs to mind mainly, Mr. Westerdale. So
Yep.
My mum still says that I think I was the only boy that he taught all the way from year 7 to year 13.
Wow.
He had a massive influence on me doing languages, and then also Mr. Gibb as well.
Yeah,
they were my two teachers for languages through school, really. So
brilliant. Clearly a life skill, clearly important, and it's good to hear you talk about that. And it was brilliant to hear you talk about there maybe going back to France to work, because that's and you definitely have, from having studied modern language or studied French, and then the business side of things obviously has had an influence in where you've gone, if you didn't know it at the time. If you were, well, you said you've got more people working for you at the moment. Have you been involved in hiring those people, or is that a different process onto your team?
We leave quite a lot of it to the agency, so that's their role with it. We advertise and they kind of recruit the people that we need for us, the amount of people that we need for us. But we do have transitions from like an agency worker to someone employed by Amazon, so we do have like a bit of say in that coming. And
what are you looking for then? What makes a good employee? What turns somebody who's a temporary worker, you say, oh, let's try and get them, as someone obviously did with you at some point.
Yeah.
What turns a transient agency Christmas worker into a full-on employee? What sort of things are you looking for?
So number one for me is always just somebody who shows a drive. Just because a lot of people consider the like warehouse work, it's not. There's a lot of bad reputation for it and things like that, but it's very tough work. It's hard work, but if you've got a drive for it, you can get places with it. And so if I see an agency worker who's got drive, who's always performing and trying to do more and asking to learn more, going in with that open mindset and with a great drive just to excel, really. That's the main thing I look for, always.
Right, so put yourself forward,
show
someone interested in what you're doing, try and do it well, as you did. I think that's, as you someone recognised that in you at some point, I'm guessing.
Yeah, I look back on that experience and think I want someone like who was similar to like what I was doing when I was in that same position as well.
Have you got any particular other memories that we talked a little bit about one before? Have you got any other memories of school that stand out? Anything particularly that when you think of school that crops up, you think, oh yeah, that's how I remember school.
Yeah, so there was one for me, and a bit of a name drop as well for Mr. Jones, who was my form tutor at the time. So it was going through year 10 and 11, and I'd always never really got the idea of exams and stuff like that, never really too fond of them, things like that. And I always got myself really worked up, really stressed, and like not very confident. I'd never been that way in exams before. And it was just a memory that popped up was just some of the conversations we had through like the year 10 and 11 period. Just how he always had a very good way of communicating with me, to kind of put me at ease and push me in the right direction. And I remember just before it came to GCSEs, like I was going through some things with him in the classroom, and it clicked, and like everything clicked, and I just never looked back from there on how I could actually achieve good results in these exams going through. So that was probably one of my most memorable moments from school.
Sort of a turning point, and
Yeah.
because worked out for you. He's now our head of year 12, Mr. Jones.
Yes.
He helps lots and lots of students on a daily basis. So he'd be really pleased to hear you've got fond memories of that.
Yeah.
So again, sort of thinking back to school days, what if you were to go back to whispering George Howe's ear when he was in year 10 or year 11,
Yeah.
knowing what you know now, what might you say? What, without obviously, you know, we shouldn't reveal the future, but what sort of advice might you try and give him, that boy you've just been talking about? What sort of things do you think you could offer to help him at that stage, knowing what you know now?
Yeah. So I always kind of ummed and ahed about certain things at school, like whether I wanted to do it, whether I didn't want to do it, things like that. And going back to the advice that I gave earlier, I would have definitely said, just do it. Like, just take advantage of the opportunity, because you won't get it at most other places. It's it's a privileged place to go to be educated, and there's a lot on offer. So I definitely would have just looked back and said to myself, just do it, just take it. If you don't like it, fair enough. But like I say, most of the time when I've done that since leaving Queggs, I've never looked back. So yeah, that would have definitely been what I said to myself if I went back.
And that's brilliant. I think that's the voice of experience talking here, where you've done that, you've realised, oh, this is the way. This is clearly when an opportunity's cropped up, you've grasped hold of it, and I think that's a really, really great message.
Yeah.
And as opportunities come up for you in the future, George, I'm sure you'll grasp them too. And I'd really, really love to stay in touch.
Me too.
I think I think having talked to you now, I'm fascinated to see where your Amazon journey goes, and I'm sure other people will be fascinated as well. I'm also fascinated to see when you travel and what level you get to in Amazon. I think thank you for sharing the background story of how it works. I think we'll do. I think when I've talked to you previously about the sort of the first mile and the last mile, which is fascinating, because I can visualize the idea of someone in a warehouse picking things that people have ordered, but then it's, as you say, the logistics side of getting it on a big van to go somewhere, and that's where you come in, and then getting it out actually to people's houses. You mentioned Christmas workers. Obviously, it's a crazy time at the minute, and good luck with when you go back on shift at the end of this week, isn't it? So good luck with. I imagine it's going to be the busiest of the busy time now. They're running to Christmas. But you take on all sorts of people, including drivers. Anyone can become a driver. Is that right?
Yeah, it's not just people. It's not just like associates inside the warehouse. It's outside the warehouse as well. So we work with external companies who are the delivery service providers in effect, and they employ the drivers like an agency would employ the warehouse associates for us. So we kind of give them a number of how many people we need, and we go from there in effect. So yeah, it's not just inside the warehouse.
Wow, interesting, brilliant. Well, thank you very much for joining us today. And thank you also again, as with James in June, as a proof of concept. Other people will tell us what they think, but I think that worked quite well. I've really enjoyed chatting to you. I hope, and I'm sure that people listening found it inspiring, as I did, and I found it interesting. The recording will be made available, and I no doubt we'll see bits of it around the place. But keep in touch, please. Next time you're back up in the area, please come into school, and when the a bit more normal, come and keep us updated about what you're up to. And I'm sure Mr. Westerdale and Mr. Jones and your other teachers would be really happy and glad to catch up with you, as I would. So take care, stay safe, good luck on shift, and thank you very much, George Howe, for joining us this evening.
No problem. Cheers, mate. I'll catch up with you soon.